Hello. So, in the last lecture we talked about the procedure or technique to solve the small oscillations problems, and we also looked at one example with a degeneracy in it and also a 0 eigenvalue, and whenever you have a 0 eigenvalue we showed that it actually means the motion of the entire system as is, that is center of mass moving with respect to keeping the entire body as rigid body. Okay. In today's class I will do one small example, and that is how we will wrap it up. Now, the example that I am going to take today is that of a double pendulum. Double pendulum of course is a very interesting example. It is probably more known for many other applications that it actually has, and also in theory of chaos this can be a very good example, but we are not going to look at those very fascinating aspects of the double pendulum. We want to look at only one small aspect of it, which is basically small oscillation. Now, double pendulum is of course very simple contraption there. It is a bob of mass m1 connected or hung from a support with a string of length L, and then there is another one which is mass m2. This may be connected to the first one by length a string of length L2. Now, in this example of course I am going to take these two string lengths to be equal, but that is okay. I have taken these masses to be different. Okay. More general problem also can be tackled exactly in the same way. The generalized coordinates, like we always do for pendulum problem, are phi 1 and phi 2. Basically you take a angle that the pendulum makes with the vertical, and it is measured counterclockwise in both cases. So, that is phi 1 and phi 2, and with these generalized coordinates I would like to write down the Lagrangian of the problem. And so, the location of this one, so I have already marked x axis here as a horizontal axis and y axis is the perpendicular, but I have taken it pointing downwards. And if you write down the connections or the coordinates of mass m1 in terms of the generalized coordinates, that would be x 1 is equal to L sin phi 1, that is basically this distance here, and y coordinate is L cos phi 1, that is basically this distance here. And for the coordinates of mass m2 we have, now I need to basically take a distance from here to here, but from here to the vertical that I have drawn here, this distance is already x 1 and then plus another L times sin of phi 2. Okay. So, x 2 is going to be x 1 plus L times sin of phi 2. Same thing about y coordinate 2. Up to this point there is a y 1 and below this there is a L cos phi 2. So, you have to add that to y 1. So, that gives me the second coordinate, and then you write down the kinetic energy like you will always do. So, it would be half m1 x1 dot square plus y1 dot square plus half m2 x2 dot square plus y2 dot square, and remember when I take a x2 dot, that x1 dot also will go here. Okay. x1 is x1 is basically depending on phi 1. So, the net kinetic energy, the equilibrium of course is at when the entire bob is hanging vertically with phi 1 is equal to 0 and phi 2 is equal to 0. Okay. All right. So, kinetic energy from this I can now substitute x 1 dot, x 2 dot and so on, and that gives me a expression. Basically this one will come because I have x 1 dot plus y 1 dot squared, and that gives me cos square phi 1 plus sin square phi 1, that basically comes to m1 L square by 2 into phi 1 dot square. But for phi 2 something else happens. Now, you have x 1 dot plus sin phi 2 cos phi 2 phi 2 dot, and then you have to take a square of that. So, you get this cross terms here, and you can easily see cos phi 1 minus phi 2 is basically cos phi 1 cos phi 2, which comes out as one cross term here, which is between when you take y 2 dot, you will have y 1 dot, that will involve one sign factor there. So, there is a sin phi 1 sorry, that should be phi 2. So, sin phi 1 sin phi 2, and then there is a cos phi 1 cos phi 2, and when you put it together you get basically this cos of phi 1 minus phi 2 term. Okay. And rearrange this, if I rearrange this and then use the equilibrium values. So, we do not want anything that depends on the coordinates. So, I am going to put phi 1 is equal to 0 and phi 2 is equal to 0. If I do that, then you can simplify the whole kinetic energy term, and you have phi 1 dot square here, you have phi 1 dot square here. So, I have put it together as a phi 1 dot square, then there is a coefficient of phi 2 dot square, and this term here we are going to split it into two parts. So, basically this one goes as a T 1 1, this one goes as T 2 2, because it is phi 2 dot into phi 2 dot, and this term here basically m 2 L square by 2 multiplied by 2 gets split between T 1 2 and T 2 1. Okay. So, let me write the matrix for T. Matrix for T would look like this. Remember, there is a m 1 m 2, and I will divide the whole expression by m 2 L square by 2. So, what you get is in T 1 1 m 1 m 2 divided by this m 2, and that is what I am going to call as factor beta. So, you have beta here, then this factor is also m 2 L square by 2. So, that is basically 1 here, because I have taken this m 2 L square by 2 as a common factor outside, and same thing for the remaining two terms. So, this is the kinetic energy matrix. Now, you look at the potential energy matrix in the same way. So, the potential energy matrix you write down. So, potential energy for Bob 1 is basically mg into L minus. So, there is basically, if it is here at the equilibrium position, its y distance or y coordinate would be L, and then it has been shifted up. So, it would be L or y minus L, and that would give me mg L 1 minus cos phi 1 as the potential energy, and also for the second one. And what do we do next? You do the Taylor expansion of this. Once you do Taylor expansion, then I get mg L. Here there is a term 1 which cancels with this one, and you get phi 1 square by 2, and then you get phi 1 square by 2 from here, phi 2 square by 2 here, and this one factor gets cancelled with this 2. And then I will take m 2 g L out of the bracket. Again remember m 1 m 2 g L into cos phi 1, this gives me that factor of beta there. And now, if you look at this one, there are no cross terms in this. If there are no cross terms in this, what happens to V 1 2 and V 2 1? They are 0. So, here is one case where the potential energy, this matrix is already diagonal, but T matrix is not. When we looked at those coupled earlier examples, the T matrix was diagonal and V matrix was not. Okay. But however, that leaves you with an eigenvalue problem. You can have a solution if both of these are diagonal, but in this case V matrix is diagonal, T matrix is not. Okay. So, it will be m 2 L square omega naught square, and I have defined omega naught as square root g by L. Okay. That is a standard, if you have a single pendulum, that would be standard natural frequency there. Okay. All right. So, the problem that we want to solve is the characteristic equation to get the eigen frequencies of this. Eigen frequencies will be determined by solving this equation omega square t minus v for the values of omega. Okay. And now, we already have matrix T and matrix V has the matrices of constants. So, this is basically simple eigenvalue problem. you get the eigen frequencies there. Okay. Now, I am not going to do this calculation for you. You can stop video now and do this calculation if you want. Write down this polynomial, it is only a quadratic. So, omega square, it is a quadratic equation in omega square. So, you write down that equation, find the roots of that quadratic equation, and that would give you 1 of the omega, and it is very easy to see, easy to calculate though. So, omega 1, one of the eigenvalues turns out to be omega naught into square root beta divided by square root beta minus 1, and the corresponding eigen vector, which is unnormalized, comes out to be 1 and minus square root beta. Okay. And how do I find this xi 1? Once I have found omega 1, I can now write down the equation for xi 1, basically omega square, omega 1 square t minus v operating on xi 1 should give you 0. So, you can solve this problem, okay, and you can get xi 1. The second eigenvalue turns out to be square root 2 square root beta divided by square root beta plus 1, instead of minus 1 you get plus 1 there to the power half, and the corresponding eigenvector is 1 square root beta, because when you look at it this way you do not immediately see how the system would behave, but it is not very difficult to guess also. Once you have this, the two solutions are very obvious, okay, and the two solutions are basically it is this matrix multiplied by cos of omega 1 times t and this matrix into cos of omega 2, and you can immediately see that because of this sign, what will happen if the system or this double pendulum is set in motion only in the first eigen mode, okay, first normal mode of vibration, then what you get? If m1 bob is travelling towards right, the m2 bob would be travelling in the opposite direction, okay, or will have an amplitude in the opposite direction. So, that minus sign tells you if phi 1 is positive, phi 2 will be negative. Okay. In the second mode, both of them are on the same side. So, they both swing onto the same side and swing onto the other side together. Okay. Though the amplitudes are not proportional, that means this one phi 2, remember square root beta or the factor beta, which is m1 plus m2 by m2, is always greater than 1. Okay. That means the lower bob swings more than the upper bob. Okay. Fine. Now, you see this graph. In this graph, what I have done is I have plotted these frequencies omega 1 and omega 2 as a function of beta. Okay. And remember, beta is a measure of the difference of these two masses in some sense. Okay. Now, what will happen if m1 is very large compared to m2, then beta becomes very large. If m1 is very small compared to m2, beta comes close to 1. Okay. So, these are the two limits. Beta comes to 1 if m1 is far less than m2 and beta goes to infinity. So, here at this limit I have beta is equal to 1. If beta is equal to 1, that means here m1 is very small, there is only m2. Okay. And on this side here, as you go towards the infinity, the mass m1 is very large, m2 has become insignificant, and the frequency omega 1, which is basically this blue curve, you can immediately see as square root beta starts getting closer and closer to 1, omega 1 will start becoming infinite. Okay. So, omega 1 will become infinite, and what will happen to omega 2? Omega 2 basically, once this becomes 1, it will be omega 0 by square root 2. Okay. So, this is the region where m2 is far greater than 1 and beta becomes equal to 1. Omega 1 of course becomes infinite and is not interesting, but omega 2 basically becomes omega naught by square root 2, and that is basically square root g by 2 l. What does that tell you? That tells you that basically this mass does not exist anymore, it is only one string of length 2 l, and the whole double pendulum actually starts behaving like a single pendulum of length 2 l with a frequency of g by square root g by 2 l, 2 l being the length of the pendulum. Okay. And what will happen to the oscillation? Here this would be 1 and this would be 1. So, both these are actually so the angle that you see here between phi 1 and phi 2, you will not see, it will seem like one single pendulum of length 2 l swinging about the support there. Okay. The other case where you get very large M1. So, in that case what will happen is this: when beta becomes very large, you have M2 M1 which is very large. Now, look at this omega 1 frequency. The omega 1 frequency can be written as omega 0 and then you divide by the square root beta. So, you would have 1 divided by 1 minus 1 over square root beta, and remember beta is large. So, 1 over square root beta is a small number, and you can use the Taylor expansion, or you can also think of this as a binomial expansion. So, or polynomial expansion. So, omega naught 1 plus square half, basically that half, and then you will get 1 over square root beta there. Okay. And omega 2, because there is a plus sign here, you would get a minus sign here, and this factor here 1 over square root beta is actually a small number because beta is very large. But what does that tell you? Omega 1 and omega 2, they are not different from each other, they are very close to each other, and the difference between the two is basically decided by this omega over square root beta. Okay, and this is what I am going to call as delta omega. And now, let me see what happens when I have situation like this. If I have situation like this, and if I start with initial conditions, which is I will take this first bob and shift it to some angle phi 0, okay, and the second bob straight away hangs down. So, phi 2 is 0. So, you have double pendulum and you pull the first bob, leaving the second bob vertical, hanging vertical, and now you let go. So, that both the velocities phi 1 dot and phi 2 dot at t is equal to 0, they will be 0, okay, and you let go of this. Now, we know I have given you 4 initial conditions. I can immediately write down the 4 constants that would appear in the general solution, and the solution would look like phi 1 phi 2 and phi 0 by 2, that one, this one, and of course, if you remember the this is 1 square root beta and this is 1 minus square root beta, okay, and this one is omega 2 here. So, let me write this as this is omega 2. Okay. So, now we have this, and now I use the simple formula of cos A plus cos B, and that gives me cos omega naught t into cos of delta omega t. Delta omega is this omega by square root beta, okay, and same thing for cos A minus cos B would give me a sin term. And if you look at this one, what does this tell you? This is basically high frequency omega naught, delta omega is far smaller than this omega. This is again the same motion as that of beats. Okay. So, the first one will show you the beats, its amplitude will be very small, then it will grow and then it will become very small again, and so on. The second one does the same thing, but only thing is there is a difference of pi by 2 between the first beats and the second beat. So, while the amplitude of one of the bobs is very small, the amplitude of the second bob is very large, and then some energy transfer will take place. The first bob starts moving with large oscillations, whereas the second bob comes to standstill, and this is exactly same thing that we saw in our first example too. Okay. So, this is the example of beats that we see here again, but more than that, this entire problem of double pendulum actually is very big and very fascinating. We have looked at a linearized model of double pendulum, which is in fact lot less interesting than the original model is. Okay. So, this brings me to the end of this small oscillations chapter, and this also brings us to the end of the course. So, this is the end of the 12th week, and I sincerely hope that you people have enjoyed this course and have benefited in some way or the other through the course. And I will wish all the best for you people for the examinations which are coming up next week. Bye for now.